Well, I think it's put the president in a very difficult position. He needs to work with others in Congress and across the US government. And he has a track record of saying very controversial things, but I think this time he's really overstepped the mark by standing side by side with the Russian president, who a lot of American critics at the moment think has been behind not only these interventions in the US elections, but also a range of other issues across the globe where Russia seems to be taking very provocative action, and he refused to criticise him and in fact ended up criticising his own intelligence agencies, it seemed, more than the Russian president.
But where does this leave the US intelligence community and the military? What would they be saying, albeit behind closed doors?
Well, I think actually it's more likely to strengthen their cause than anything. Very often, if a president makes a statement, it's taken very seriously and can be quite damaging if he's critical of a particular element of the intelligence service or some other aspect of the government. But I think the nature of how this was done means that it's more likely to backfire on Donald Trump himself. And I can see the Mueller investigation into the Russian interference in the elections, the alleged interference and possible connections to the Trump campaign to intensify actually as a result of his intervention in this way, because he's really amplified the sense that he's very dismissive of that investigation, very dismissive of all the evidence that's mounting to suggest that Russia was involved, and I think it's probably going to mean that there'll be more of an emphasis on that investigation now than there perhaps would have been had he been more critical in public of the Russian president and the potential role of Russia in that election.
Given the speed of the news cycle, Trevor, and the fact that things change very rapidly these days in Washington, what do you think is going to happen next with President Trump? As you said there earlier, he's certainly overstepped the mark with this particular series of comments.
Well, when he's done so with other issues, he maybe backtracks a little bit, but ultimately, if he really believes something, he's going to stand by it. And I can see him really being at loggerheads with high-ranking members of Congress, perhaps others within his own administration, and certainly the media are likely to give him a very rough ride when he returns to Washington. And even if the White House is trying to shift the agenda away from this issue, I think this is such a major intervention that's occurred here that it's very likely that it will run for several days yet, and it will probably take a fairly major shift of another issue coming along to kind of put this on the back burner. The investigation is going to carry on for many weeks yet. If Trump tries to close that down now, I think there's going to be even more of a negative reaction against him. So I suspect this is going to greatly backfire on the president's wish to kind of put this whole issue to bed and move on to other things.